In other words, times 6. Yeah, there's no way I can make that much. Aints held his head in his hands, but suddenly his eyes popped open. Oh, I can just substitute something else. I can make a currency that can only be used inside Nazarick, like toy money, and say that one is worth 100,000 or something. After he finished shouting, Aints frowned again. How will I have them use the money? Everything inside the great tomb of Nazarick was free, so even if he created a currency, there was nothing for them to spend it on. Maybe they could buy items from this world with it. Aints compared the items of this world with those of Nazarick, and wondered if anyone would even want them. But making free facilities suddenly cost money would be totally backward. What should I do? After thinking for a little while, he had a brilliant idea. That's it. All I have to do is make the Guardians think about it. I just have to ask them what they want badly enough that they would pay for it. Delighted, he murmured, "Genius, it's a genius idea," until his expression suddenly soured. Man, I really talk to myself a lot these days, thought Aints. He'd been aware of his growing tendency to talk to himself back in the game when no one was coming around anymore, but he wondered why it hadn't gone away now that the NPCs all moved according to their own wills. Was it already a habit? Or maybe it's because I am still alone. He smiled a desolate smile. It probably wasn't fair to the NPCs who had minds now to say he was alone, but that was how he felt, perhaps because he was killing Satoru Suzuki in order to play the leader of the Supreme Beings, Aints Ulgaun. As he sighed and focused once more on the array of coins on the desk, there came a knock at the door. After a moment, the door opened. When he saw his guest was who he thought it was, Narbaral Gamma, Aints made a certain face. The expression was snobbish, with one side of his lips curled up. Because the low-level illusion forming Aints' face expressed his emotions honestly, there was a chance it could display something unbecoming of the ruler of Nazarick. For that reason, in order to create the picture of a dignified ruler in front of others, especially Narbaral, he took great pains to stick to this single expression, which he had practiced in front of a mirror. "What's the matter, Nabe?" He used his normal Aints voice. "Master Momon. You still call me Master sometimes, huh? I guess we just have to admit it's a habit of yours, but when I pointed out, you stopped for a while, so I guess that's where we stand. You don't have to bow your head. I am not mad, and as for the extra respect, well, it's fine. The heads of the guild seem to be laboring under some misunderstanding too. Anyhow, what's wrong? The iron ore you ordered the merchant to collect is ready. I didn't order him. It was a normal business transaction." Aints thought, but the dignified expression he'd put on earlier remained firmly in place. "I see. And where is this iron ore from?" "From all 8 spots. My apologies, but I didn't ask." "Fine, I have plenty of gold. Even if we don't know where it's coming from, I have enough gold to buy it all." Aints confidently packed all the coins on the desk into the bag, tossed it at her feet, and watched her respectfully pick it up. "Understood. But may I ask you something? The reason I am buying iron from all different locations," Narbaral nodded, and Aints explained, "it's to throw it in the exchange box. Basically, I want to find out if there is a difference in price depending on where it's collected. The exchange box didn't take shape into account. For example, an elaborate stone carving dropped into the box would get the same assessed value as a rock of the same weight with no craftsmanship involved. So what about composition difference in quality? That was why he was collecting iron from various locations. As you know, we assessed some wheat recently. It took so much to get just 1 gold coin," Aints grumbled in his head. That meant they could make money if they produced a lot of it, so he'd come up with a plan to create wheat fields outside Nazarick. He figured if they used undead and golems, they should be able to create vast fields. Granted, there was a pile of problems that needed to be tackled before they could get there. "I understand. Then I will go and make the purchase right away." "Okay, but do be careful. We can be sure we are not being targeted. In that case, you know what to do, right? I'll take a shadow demon to guard me. I'll prioritize safety over intelligence gathering. And if the situation takes a turn for the worse, I will retreat at full speed. In that event, I will teleport to the fake Nazarick that Aura has been building. Let the enemy collect false information." "Good. Focus on safety. Don't take an unpopulated route where it would be easy to attack you. And even if people try to pick a fight or call out to you, don't injure them too badly. That time a guy came crying to me for help, saying all he did was hit on you was, frankly, shocking. You can be whipping out your intent to kill like that. Smashing the hand of a pickpocket might not be so bad, but don't do it too often. And definitely do not call humans worms or other names. Basically, have some restraint when it comes to hurting or killing humans. We are Momon and Nabe, lauded as Raven Black, adventurers of the highest rank. Narbril expressed her understanding, and Aints nodded, thinking that was about all he had for warnings. Yeah, that's it. Okay then, go Nabe. With the leather pouch in hand, Narbril bowed once and left the room. Watching her go, Aints sighed deeply despite his lack of lungs. Expenses always go up right when you have no money. Honestly, this sucks. Chapter 3, The Finders and the Found 126 Mid-Fire Moon, August 3:27 p.m. After taking the old woman to her house, Sebas proceeded toward his original destination. He arrived at a place with a long wall. Beyond the wall were 3 5-story towers. With no buildings higher than that nearby, they seemed especially tall. Those towers were surrounded by several long, thin 2-story buildings. This was the headquarters of the Kingdom's Wizards Guild. They needed spacious grounds because they were developing new spells and training arcane casters. The reason they had so much land, despite receiving little government support, was likely because they were the sole producers of magical items. Eventually, the sturdy-looking gate came into view. The lattice door was open wide. Armed guards occupied the 2-story towers on either side. The guards didn't stop him, they just glanced at him, and Sebas went through the gate. Beyond the gate was a broad, gently sloping staircase and a door leading to an impressive, old white-walled building. Of course, the door was open to welcome visitors. Inside was a small entrance hall and then a lobby. Several chandeliers hung from the double-height ceiling, burning with magic light. On the right was the lobby lounge. It had several sofas and a few casters engaged in conversation. On the left side was the board. Figures clad in robes appropriate for arcane casters and other people who seemed like adventurers were studiously observing the pieces of parchment posted there. In the back, a few young men and women were seated behind a counter. Each wore a robe with the emblem displayed at the building entrance embroidered on their chests. To either side of the counter stood what resembled life-size mannequins. These were slender figures with no eyes or noses, wood golems. Apparently they were guards. The lack of human guards, except for those outside, was likely a display of the Wizards Guild's confidence. Sebas' measured footfalls clicked across the floor as he approached the counter. A young man at the counter noticed him and communicated a modest salutation with his eyes. Sebas gave a slight bow in return. He visited often, so they knew each other. The young man smiled in a barely perceptible way when Sebas arrived in front of him. He greeted him as always. "Welcome to the Wizards Guild, Sir Sebas. What can I do for you? I would like to buy a magic scroll. May I see the usual list?" "Yes, sir." The young man quickly put a rather large book on the counter. He'd probably secretly gotten it ready the moment he caught sight of Sebas. The book was a splendid item with high-quality thin white paper inside and a leather cover. Considering the letters of the title were sewn in with gold thread, this item itself had to be worth quite a bit. Sebas pulled the book nearer and opened it. Unfortunately, the writing was not in letters he could read. No one from Yggdrasil would be able to read them. Even if they could understand spoken language through some strange law of this universe, writing was different. But Sebas had received an item from his master to resolve this problem. Sebas reached into his pocket, took out a case, and opened it. Inside was a pair of eyeglasses. The slim frames were made of a metal similar to the metal silver. Upon closer inspection, one could make out tiny characters, like crests, etched into them. The lenses were blue frost crystal, cut and polished thin. When he put on the glasses, he was magically able to read the letters. While carefully yet quickly turning the pages, Sebas' hand suddenly stopped. He looked up from the book and addressed the woman sitting next to the young man behind the counter. "Did you need something?" "Oh no," the woman blushed and lowered her eyes. "I was just thinking you have nice posture. Thank you." He smiled faintly, and the woman's face turned even redder. Sebas was a white-haired gentleman people fell for just from looking at him. Not only did his attractive features draw attention, but his air of elegance did as well. When he walked down the street, 9 out of 10 women turned to watch him, regardless of age. It happened often enough that if the woman at reception lost herself staring at him, there was nothing to be done. Now that he understood the situation, Sebas turned back to the book. He stopped on a specific page and asked the young man, "Could you give me a detailed description of what this spell, floating board, does?" "Yes, sir." He began the explanation without missing a beat. Floating board is a Tier 1 spell. It creates a translucent hovering board. The size of the board and maximum weight limit depend on the caster's magical energy, but when it is cast with a scroll, the board is about 3 feet squared. The weight limit is 110 pounds. The board can go up to 5 yards away from the caster. The caster can have it follow them. It only follows, however. It is not possible to push it forward. And if the caster should turn around, it will slowly circle around to remain at the rear. It is a spell that is generally used for carrying things. It is often seen on public works construction sites. "I see," Sebas nodded. "Then I would like to buy one of these." "Yes, sir." The young man showed no surprise at Sebas buying a spell that was not terribly popular. The reason was that Sebas almost always bought unpopular spells. The guild was grateful for it. It helped them get rid of their excess inventory. "Will that be 1 scroll, sir?" "Yes, please." The young man nodded slightly at the man sitting next to him. The man, who had been listening to the conversation, stood immediately. He opened a door in the rear wall. This door led to the back. He went in. Scrolls were very expensive. It wouldn't do to just have big stacks of them at the counter, even if the place was guarded. About 5 minutes later, the man returned. He had one rolled-up piece of parchment in his hand. "Here you are, sir." Sebas examined the scroll on the counter. The rolled-up parchment seemed very sturdy. It looked different from run-of-the-mill writing material. The spell's name was written on it in black ink. Sebas made sure it matched the spell he had requested. Then he finally took off the glasses. "Yes, that is the one. I'll take this, please, thank you." The young man politely bowed his head. "This scroll is a Tier 1 spell, so that will be 1 gold and 10 silvers. A potion of the same level, made only with magic, cost 2 gold, so the scroll was relatively cheap." That stemmed from the fact that a person usually couldn't activate scrolls unless they could already use the same family of spells. It made perfect sense that potions, which anyone could use, would be more expensive. Of course, even if the spell was cheap, it was still quite a sum for an ordinary person. It was a month and a half's salary. But for Sebas, no. For the master Sebas served, it was not so much. Sebas took a leather pouch from his breast pocket. He loosened the opening, removed 11 coins, and gave them to the young man, with exact change. The young man didn't do anything like checking to make sure the coins were proper currency in front of Sebas. He was a frequent customer and had built that kind of trust. "That old man is so cool." "Totally." As Sebas left the Wizards Guild, the receptionists, especially the women, chatted excitedly. They acted more like girls who had met the prince they pined for than women of poise and intelligence. One of the men behind the counter had a slightly jealous frown. He didn't say anything because he could see how elegant Sebas was. He must have experience serving a pretty important noble. I wouldn't be surprised if he was the 3rd son of a noble himself. Nobles who didn't inherit their houses often became butlers or maids. The higher a noble's rank, the more likely they were to specifically hire this type of person. Sebas's bearing was so impeccable, it made sense to think he must have been of noble blood. He carries himself so beautifully. Everyone seated behind the counter nodded. "If he invited me to tea, I'd definitely go." "Yeah, me too, definitely." The girls squealed. The men talked among themselves, glancing at the girls. They were still going on about how he probably knew tremendously sophisticated places and how he would do absolutely everything an escort should do. He seems incredibly knowledgeable. "Do you think he is a caster? I wonder." "Maybe. All the spells he chose had been developed recently. From that, they could infer he had some magical knowledge. If he were buying something on orders from a superior, he shouldn't have needed to look at the book. He could have just asked for the scroll by name. The fact that he didn't but consulted the reference himself meant that Sebas was choosing what to buy. It was natural to think he was no mere old man, but someone with specialized magic education, a caster, and those glasses looked really expensive. I wonder if they ray magic. Nah, they just seem like high-quality glasses made by dwarves or something. Yeah, it is amazing he has such fancy glasses. One man murmured, "I want to meet that pretty lady he brought with him again." But he was met with disagreement. "Really? She seemed all appearances and nothing else, you know. Yeah, I felt bad for Sebas. She seems to really work him hard. She was pretty, but her personality is definitely awful. Even the way she looked at us was the worst. I really pity him having to serve someone like that. The men fell silent as the women began criticizing the lady. Sebas' master was a peerless beauty. She could steal hearts in the blink of an eye. The women there were each beautiful enough to represent the Wizards Guild, but the difference between them and her was night and day. The guys wanted to tell them they shouldn't be jealous, but it was obvious what would happen if they did that. None of them was that stupid, so okay, that's enough chatter. The young man spotted an adventurer walking toward the counter, and the group immediately changed their focus and expressions. 26 Mid-Fire Moon, August 4, 6 p.m., exiting the Wizards Guild, Sebas casually checked the sky. Things had taken longer than planned because he de-escorted that old woman home, and the blue was gradually turning a deep red. When he took his watch out of his breast pocket, it was already the time he planned to be home, but he still hadn't finished his errand. It's fine if I leave it for tomorrow, so should I put it off? Or should I get home later than planned but finish everything today? He hesitated only a moment. The incident with the old woman had been his own doing, so he needed to fulfill his duties. Shadow Demon, a presence squirmed in Sebas' shadow. Please tell Solution I'll be back late. That is all. There was no answer, but the presence stirred and then receded, moving from shadow to shadow. Now then, murmured Sebas as he set off walking. He didn't have any particular destination. He was attempting to get a complete picture of the capital's geography. He hadn't been specifically ordered to do so, but he decided to do it voluntarily as part of his intelligence gathering. Okay, I guess today I'll go that way, he murmured, stroked his beard, and twirled the scroll he carried in one hand. He was acting like a kid in a good mood. He walked farther and farther away from the safe area at the center of the capital. After he turned and continued down several roads, the alleys started getting a bit dirty and sending a faint but unpleasant smell. It was the stench of raw garbage and filth. It seemed like it would permeate clothing, but Sebas strode silently on. He stopped abruptly and looked around. The alley was on a total backstreet. It was so narrow there was only enough room for two people to pass by each other. Since the sun was low behind the tall, deserted buildings on either side of the small alley, no light came in. It would have been difficult for a human to walk there, but Sebas didn't have any problem. He walked with noiseless steps, melting into the darkness. He had turned several corners and proceeded to even more deserted areas when suddenly his unhesitating steps stopped. He arrived here by walking aimlessly as his whims dictated, but he ventured quite a ways from the house that was his base. He had a general instinctive sense of where he was, and he drew a line from there to his base in his mind. With Sebas' physical strength, it wasn't such a long distance, but that was if he walked in a straight line. If he followed the streets, it would take quite a while. Considering night was falling, it was probably a good idea to head back. He wasn't worried about Solution, who was living with him. Even if an incredibly powerful enemy appeared, there was a monster in her shadow, just as there was one in Sebas'. It could definitely buy her enough time to run away. Still, I guess I'll go home. He wanted to stroll a bit more, but he doubted it was very good to allot too much time to something that was practically a hobby. But even if he was going to withdraw, he wanted to at least see what was up ahead. So he continued down the small alley. As Sebas proceeded silently through the darkness, a heavy-looking iron door about 15 yards ahead of him began slowly opening with a grating sound, without warning. Light spilled from inside. Sebas stopped and watched in silence to see what would happen. Once the door was all the way open, a person's face poked out. The backlighting allowed Sebas to see only a silhouette. It appeared to be a man as he scanned the road, but apparently the man didn't discover Sebas. The man returned inside without incident. The man tossed a rather large cloth bag outside with a thud. Sebas could see its soft contents bend and change shape by the light escaping through the door. Although the door was still open, the man who had thrown the bag like it was trash seemed to have gone back inside for the moment and didn't do anything else. Sebas furrowed his brow for a moment. He wondered whether he should stay his course or proceed in a different direction. This seemed like a bad situation. After some brief indecision, he decided to continue down the narrow alley now that it was quiet again. Umph! The opening of the big bag ripped. Seba's steps echoed along the alley, finally closing the distance between him and the bag. As he was about to pass it, he stopped. He felt a faint sensation, as if his slacks had caught on something.